I call this public meeting of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Opens Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Welcome, everyone, to the November meeting. And we do have an oral speaker that has signed up to address the board. So thanks for coming tonight to share your opinion. A few rules of order regarding the public comment portion of the meeting. According to board policy, each speaker has up to 5 minutes to speak when necessary for effective meeting management or to accommodate large numbers of individuals wishing to address the board. The presiding officer may make adjustments to public comment procedures. The speaker may also provide a written statement to the board to supplement their comments if desired. We will have our board secretary, Liz, keeping our time tonight. She will hold up time cards showing the time you have remaining, and I believe it'll be on the screen above your head. The board may not ask or answer questions or make any comment regarding public comments not associated with the posted agenda items. The board may respond with specific factual information, or existing policy may be furnished in response to inquiries on a posted agenda item. Please note, to comply with FERPA laws and student privacy, you may not mention a student by name. And additionally, according to board policy, you may not make derogatory comments about any individual staff member, either by name or title. Should you need to file a complaint, you may do this through our formal grievance process outlined in board policy. So with that, we have Gary Lasada coming to speak to us today. So Gary, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening to all. My name is Gary Lasada. Okay. My name is Gary Lasada, and I reside at 802 Dove Creek Trail, South Lake, Texas. I'm currently a member of the TAD Board of Directors, TAD Appraisal District Board of Directors. 2 years ago, the then sitting board, which was most of you then, cast all your votes in my favor, and fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, I did win and have served on the board for the last 2 years. So this year I'm asking for your votes again. I believe your votes went from 168 to 175. So I guess you've done some right things, and that's a good thing. So tonight it's twofold. Number one, I wanted to thank you for 2 years ago's vote, and hopefully this year I'll get your vote. And the second thing, to give you a quick report on what's happening, because a lot of times you don't see people like me when you work in the background. But first thing that happened to me in January of 2020, in my swearing in meeting, I walked into the boardroom and I was just shocked. There was no United States flag, there was no Texas flag, there was no invocation, there was no Pledge of Allegiance. By the second meeting, all of that was taking place. So we did change that very quickly. We felt that we need to be accountable to the people and respect the people and the wishes of the people. Also, meetings are now publicly broadcast. Back then they weren't. You couldn't find us if you tried. And currently, if you wanted to hear us live, but only on audio, we do have a live broadcast. Also, board packets are now available in advance to the public, so they can see what we're talking about in addition to the agenda itself. I think that's very important. We're trying to be much more transparent than we have been in the past, and I think we're succeeding. I want to give you a little idea, because this is not talked about very often, but in 2019, there was $825,000 residual unspent funds in our budget that was returned back to the taxing entities. In 2020, we had 1.25 million unspent funds, and that also was returned to the taxing entities. We don't believe it should have rolled over and just stayed there for whatever purposes. So we are very concerned as board members as to our responsibility to the entities. 2 years ago, I also found out something was disturbing. There was an individual consultant who I will not name, but who was being paid $32,703 per month without any agreement. The board had never approved it, so that's changed. We now have a policy in place that any billing agreement or contract in excess of $50,000 needs to be provided to the board for review and approval prior to issuance. The last thing that I'll share with you, well, two things, is that there was our first comprehensive budget workshop held in this past summer of 2021. The last one that was held was in 2016. It's critical in my thinking as a manager to make sure that we can understand what the budget's about, why it's been written the way it is, and why the dollars are there. So that was a very good time for us to work together as a staff and a board. And lastly, I do want you to know and feel comfortable that this board, which has been defined as a rubber stamp, coffee and donuts board, is no longer such. We are a board that works hard. We try to do what's best for the taxpayer, and hopefully you'll recognize that. So once again, in wrapping up, would love to have your votes for this next year. I won't be able to attend next month's meeting. I'm on a circuit right now, and I'm running off to another meeting in the next 10 or 15 minutes. But I thank you for your votes. I hope that I have represented you well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move into operations report then. The first is the quarterly demographic and housing analysis. Mr. Trent Smith. Trent, welcome.
President Newcomb, members of the board, Dr. Chadwell, thanks for having me tonight. Tonight I'll be going through the third quarter report for the demographic study, and we'll look at a little bit of what's been going on in the district. We'll look at a little bit of we'll look at a little bit of economic information, and then we'll look at some housing data, and then we'll look at your 10-year forecast. So looking at kind of what has happened over the last couple of years, you can see that last year, obviously, COVID came in, took away a considerable amount of growth from the district, although you were in positive numbers, which wasn't everyone in the area. And so you did actually grow last year, but then this year you kind of bounced even a little more than you normally would have, 1,088 students. But you'd also had a tremendous amount of housing growth in that factor. So you're looking at over the last 2 years, you've grown about 1,200 students. We do believe there's still some room in there for some of that COVID return to continue to happen as we move forward into the next year. One of the things that happen when you grow 1,088 students, though, when you look at the table, the lower table, that's your cohort change. And so that's how many second graders became third graders, how many fifth graders became sixth graders. And you can see almost all the way across the board, with the exception of 11th to 12th grade, you had positive growth from 1 year transitioning into the other. And so, and you had record growth at pre-K. You grew almost 60% or almost 56% from the previous year's pre-K at 342 up to 533 this year. And so that number grew exponentially. You had kindergarten, which was very high. First grade was a growth of 16%. And then actually grew quite a bit at second grade as well. And then at ninth grade had a banner year as well, growing almost 17.5% from eighth grade into your ninth grade year. And so all that kind of combined, you can see all of that carrying through was what kind of pushed that 1,088 students through in the growth this year. But the big factor behind most of that is your housing. And so this year you grew, you had 1,570 starts, new home starts inside the district, with almost 1,800 new home closings. This is the annualized rate at the end of the third quarter. And so right now your inventory, which is your under construction, your vacant, your finished vacant, and your model homes. So most of those are going to be your under construction homes. You have about 600 of those in inventory right now, with 887 vacant developed lots. And so right now you're on that growth path. The vacant developed lots is a little tight right now, and it's been tight for the last 2 quarters, and that's kind of slowed some of that growth down a little bit over the last 2 quarters. But as we go through this, you'll understand we're expecting that to change pretty quickly. And so when you look at where you were last year versus where you are this year, housing-wise, in starts, you had 2,200 starts in 2021 or in 2020, and right now you're just under 1,000 for the first 3 quarters. So we're not going to hit those 2,200 numbers this time around, but we are likely going to see a pretty strong fourth quarter, get you back up into the 1,200 to 1,300 starts for the year. We'll likely get up there in that 1,400 closes for the year. You can see the difference between what was happening last year and this year. And a lot of that is directly related to that lack of just available lots to build on. And you've also had some supply chain issues that are slowing some of that down. And so that's made a difference in when you look at 2020 versus 2021. And so now let's look specifically at the areas around the district. And so this is your top 10 subdivisions by annual close. Right now, Waters Bend has the most with 254 closes in the last year. They had 17 in the quarter, and they only have that 81 vacant developed lots left. And so that's one of those that's going to slow down a little bit until they get some more lots on the ground. They still have another 320 on there. And so that's going to last them another, year and a half to 2 years once they get those delivered. Quarter Horse is one that had 158 closes this year, and you can see that closed them out completely. They're done. No more lots to deliver there. But you do have some that are still moving forward. Pioneer Point still has 234 futures there. And so you had 6 different subdivisions that were over 100 closes this last year and moving into 2022. And so what are we doing? Where are we going with, with the lack of lots right now? You can see, your largest one right now has 144 vacant developed lots. So this is your vacant developed lot heat map. You can see the Eagle Mountain Elementary Zone has the most vacant developed lots right now, and with 100 of that, with the resort on Eagles Mountain Lake, which is that 144. You've got Lake Vista Ranch Edition with 106, and so those two right there alone are the ones that are really driving and giving that particular elementary zone the most available vacant developed lots. And we expect that trend to continue as you guys continue to grow. In the areas that are closer to Fort Worth, that ring is continuing to grow outward. And so all of that growth is starting to kind of, finish out in some of those areas, and it's pushing its way northwest into the district as we move into the next step, which is where your futures are. And right now, Comanche Springs and Eagle Mountain are the ones that have the most futures moving forward with the district. Chapel Hill has over 4,700 futures there. You've got Bonds Ranch still out there with 3,523. And you've got North Point that still has 1,673 lots available to build on as well. So those three are driving that, and all of those right now are in the Eagle Mountain Elementary Zone. And so this is a look at where that activity has been. This is kind of a combination of those 3 maps. You can see that the most activity as far as closes has been Eagle Mountain with in quarters with starts, and then also annual closings at Comanche Springs as some of those are starting to close out. But you can see Eagle Mountain still overall has the most potential for growth over the next several years with 12,000 futures inside Eagle Mountain Elementary Zone. And so looking at, we spoke about the vacant developed lots and kind of how tight they are right now. But looking at this map, you can see there's a lot of red outlines. And so those red outlines represent every one of those subdivisions has lots under development. So right now you have 2,500 lots under development right now. And when I was looking at this earlier, was really, what's going to kind of get you back in that high volume market again is that about 1,500 of those are really close to delivery. So 1,500 of that 2,500 are paving their streets right now. And so those are going to come into play in the next 3 to 6 months. And so that's going to open up to get back into those 400 and 500 start quarters again as we move into 2022. And so what does that mean for your forecast overall? You grew 1,088 students this year. We're expecting to grow about 1,200 students next year. And then another 1,000 the year after that, and then we'll start to see a little bit of normalization, I'm going to call it. And so we'll start getting a more normal yield off of the type of homes that are coming in, and we'll hit that 940. And so you're going to still continue to grow at that 2 to 3% over the next 7 to 10 years. Hitting in 26, 27, expecting to hit over 27,000 students. And then by the time you get to 31, 32, you're going to be at 31,000 students. And so what does that look like at the campus level? Well, right now you've got, obviously, your halfway development is your early ed program. So you're going to have some control over that to a certain extent. At Bryson Elementary, you're at 552, hitting 600 in 23-24, hitting 650 out there in 26-27. At Comanche Springs, you're at 547, actually expecting them to hit over 800 in 23-24 and hitting over 1,000 students out there in 25-26. And so that's where we're expecting that next amount of growth as we move into, we've got, new locations on the way that are going to help take up some of that capacity. Those are the areas where we see the most, obviously the most growth coming. And then as you get out about 5 years, you can see where Eagle Mountain has really started to take off as all of those lots that are developing out there start to come in and start to turn into kids. So we're there at 417 next year. We're expecting them to more than double by 26, 27. And so that's kind of the overview look at your elementary classes. When you look at the middle schools, right now Wayside is the one that has the most as far as capacity goes, capacity issues. So they're at 1,055, expecting to get up to basically 1,100 by 23, 24, hitting 1,200 for 25, 26. Prairie Vista is also going to get pretty tight out there. 884 this year, basically 900 next year, hitting 1,000 out in 25, 26. At the high school level, you're at 2,400 at Boswell, hitting 2,600 next year, hitting 2,800, and then getting up to 3,000 students out in 27, 28. And of course, we know you're going to have high school before then, but that's as it stands right now. That's where those students would be. Saginaw's at 2,100, getting up to 2,300 in 24, 25. And you've got at Chisholm, you're at basically 2,360, getting up to 2,650 or basically over 2,600 in 24, 25. So that is the quick overview of what's going on demographic-wise inside the district. You added 5% this year at 1,088 students. You had 35 active subdivisions and 19 future subdivisions with 2,500 lots under development. And again, 1,500 of those are ready, really close to delivery. So you're going to really kind of catch up with some of that as we move out of that pandemic stage of kind of what's happening with the housing market. And so we're expecting to be over 27,000 students out in 26, 27, and be over 31,000 students out in 31, 32. Are there any questions?
No, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Very well.
Next is a bus transportation update. Mr. Dwayne Jones. Welcome, Dwayne.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Newcomb, trustees, Dr. Jadwell. The report tonight was the scheduled report was to be a two-part report, with the first part being an update from a previous board meeting, or to a previous board meeting, from the Gold Star Senior VP Kirk Wilkie. Due to unforeseen circumstances, Mr. Wilkie could not be here tonight. So those items that are listed in the on your agenda will be moved to the December meeting for discussion at that time. And we will have Mr. Wilkie present for the December, actually, I'm sorry, I don't know the date, for the December meeting. The second part of that was just the part that I was going to cover is just in response to the previous meeting that we had with regards to activity vehicles and providing buses or activity vehicles in order to transport for extracurricular activities. I was asked to kind of go through and just do a little bit of research. This is just a report item, obviously, so this is just to give some options, some things that are out there that if the district were to be interested in possibly purchasing some sort of a fleet of activity vehicles. The vehicles I'm going to show you are just kind of an idea of what's available in the price range as it currently stands. To get these, I contacted 3 different bus/activity vehicle manufacturers in the state. And there you go. So the first option is what you may, some people call them people movers, some people call them, quite honestly, they're just a regular van or bus. But these are just a couple of different options, different manufacturers, but it shows the different numbers of passengers that each one could carry. The look of the vehicle, I only included these 2 pictures because the look of the vehicle really doesn't change between a 14, let's say, and a 30, it just kind of gets longer. But the vehicle itself is pretty much the same. So the price ranges on these, again, right now, these are the prices that are out there right now. Depending on if we were wanting to pursue this, it may vary actually quite a bit just because of the demand right now. Some buses are harder to come by, and there's a shortage, a little bit of a shortage in the market. So these are the current prices, but again, depending on when we want to pursue something. But this kind of gives you an idea from this type of vehicle. Going up a little bit larger in size. Of course, the image on the left is really just what you would used to be seeing as a school bus. It's just not yellow. And I'll also say at this time, the plan, if we were wanting to do it, at least what we were thinking is that these types of vehicles would not be used for home to school routes. So as such, the need for them to be the yellow that you always see driving around, there's not a requirement for that. So these can be white, these can be wrapped, they can be painted, they can vary in whatever. The only requirement for the yellow is if they're going to be used at home to school, and that would not be the plan. So again, the one on the left is just a regular school bus. The one on the right is it's still more of a van type or a large truck. It's not necessarily on up to a bus status yet, but you can get those all the way up to like a 54 passenger. As you can see, the price range down on those can get fairly expensive. So these are the larger, where you're talking more of like either a charter or something that's definitely larger in size and then larger as far as overall capacity to drive. So this is somewhere, what's listed on a lot of websites, it says 51 to 60. There's a potential to get a little bit more, just like a regular bus, as far as depending on the size of the passengers. But these are, for the most part, I just included more of a range on the new price. There are used vehicles, used types of this, but what I was seeing is the mileage on those is so high. That's kind of why they've upgraded to, or they bought a new one. So the ones that are out there, they may have 400,000 miles on them or something. So while it's still an option, I didn't know that, I didn't include those in here. I just didn't know that would be something that we would be looking for a long-term investment. And then these are just these are more of what you would see, just imagining those yellow, but you can get those same types of buses in a non-yellow color. These obviously are white. But these can also be used for these types of vehicles. We actually use these in the district as yellow, 77 and 84, and those are roughly the price ranges for those. So if that were something that we wanted to consider. Last thing, I won't read this or whatever, but there's just some, this is just some information, background information that through my research that I found as far as what is, they call it an MFSAB, multifunction school activity bus. So that kind of goes through as far as what that is and what the requirements are as far as for safety and compliance as far as the school district. And then there's additional information down at the bottom as far as rules and regulations. So again, this is just a report. This is just to kind of give you guys some information. If there's something that you want us to pursue, then we can certainly go forward and get more concrete numbers specifically to actual vehicles, as far as the sizes and quantities and whatnot. But, this is just to give you an overview of what maybe is available out there in the market. So, any questions?
Jason?
Nope.
I was going to ask if
Looking this way, then go ahead, baby.
They require CDLs, or which of these would require a CDL license?
CDL is, so the research that I've done, starting at 16 to 23 passengers. It goes by the number of passengers. So 16 to 23 requires what they call a Class C CDL, and then 24 and above, 24 passengers and above requires a Class B CDL. So really anything, anything smaller than that. We certainly could have a use probably for those, but yeah, I would say for the most part, anything that it would be safe to say we would need a CDL, the person would need a CDL to drive.
So how much money would that, there'd be an offset there, I'm thinking from our current bus situation, who are with Gold Star, for example, would they not need as many buses, so it would bring the contract down to help offset the cost, or is that something you can see if that would assist in that area?
That would be a discussion that we would need to have at that time, simply because with the discussion that even brought this about was the discussion about spares and how many additional buses that we had surplus at the time. So depending on how many the district decided that we wanted to make sure and maintain at all times, because there's other things that, depending on what we wanted to use these particular types of vehicles for, there may still be a need that Gold Star would need to supplement in some ways, various things as far as depending on what the activity was. So there's a chance that, yes, the number of overall buses could be reduced, but that would just be a discussion that we would need to have at the time based on what we were pursuing if we went this route.
So when Mr. Templeton was here last time, his number that he threw out, he said we had 25 buses,
Yes, sir.
activity buses with wheels on the ground somewhere in the district. So what I was going to join in was what Mr. Newcomb said. I believe if we went this route, I would think that we wouldn't need, obviously we have trouble getting 25. We went into that big discussion the last time. So I think doing something like this I'd be very interested to see, what the numbers look like and how that would affect the budget number for Gold Star, if that could help do that, because I would feel maybe more comfortable knowing that we had that under our umbrella instead of theirs, to ensure that we get our kids where they're supposed to go, because that seems to be an issue. And this might be something that, as we look into it, this might be something that might be part of the answer.
But I agree, I would be expecting some sort of an offset versus the current contract. I think we all probably.
Yeah.
Yes, and it wouldn't be all 25 simply because within that 25 number is also what we just call spares. So typically, most transportation vendors have a 10% spare. So we run 92 home to school routes. So 10% of that is roughly, let's just say 10 buses. So if we wanted to go that route, then we most likely would still keep at least 102 buses on there, just for if we, in the event that we have buses that for home to school that are broken down. Or even,
That wouldn't be a home to school deal. That would
Yes.
take the extracurricular out.
Yes.
Also be, and we don't know what size, and so I would like to hear a report back about how they would be used for what teams, and then the combination of what all the different options you showed us.
Sure.
I would think you'd use some smaller ones. Well, I'm not going to get into all that, but you could use some smaller ones for different situations and
Yes.
then the larger ones. Okay.
Sure.
Mr. Newcomb, I think that was part of the major impetus for this, is to look at those where you have teams like golf teams, swimming, so forth, all the smaller groups that often use a larger bus, which takes that bus out of that number. And so when we're talking about this, we see a range of buses, but the ones that I think are most interesting to us are actually the people movers or shuttles,
Right.
to be able to use that rather than a large bus, especially in the areas like where you have to move kids a lot, like at a tournament, where you need a lot of flexibility. So we certainly can bring that back to you. And I think part of it too is look at what teams actually use the different types of buses and which ones we think would make the most sense. I will mention, and this is part of this, maybe just the timing that we're in with COVID and the unavailability of drivers, is that we are having challenges with charter buses. And so I know that Coach Barker and Mr. Bell working for a playoff game this week to make sure that we had charter buses, and they're contacting all over Dallas-Fort Worth to be able to get our football and band, drill team, cheerleaders, et cetera, there, and that's been very difficult. So obviously that price tag's much higher, but we do have a regular use for charter buses that every time we're fighting against every other school district to get those. So.
Yes, sir.
That was a driver question though, wasn't it?
That is a driver
Not a
question. Yes,
bus
sir.
As much? or-
Well, it's both actually, but right
Okay.
now it's a driver issue. So right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but right now it was about the drivers available for the buses. But we run into the other two. We run into, there's no charter buses available because they're all leased out, so. How many places did y'all contact to? Okay, let's go.
Did you find some?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
We did, because they're very persistent and we weren't gonna, I mean, honestly, for us, there was a cost. If we did not find charter buses, then we would really be in a situation where we would really want to strongly consider staying overnight rather than having our staff drive regular school buses back at that time of night because they'll be getting back at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so that was one reason why we really persisted to get charter buses in this situation.
And I assume there'd be some, well, would there be some type of gas savings, some type of energy savings if you're driving a 14 passenger?
Yes.
Or 10 that could be considered in this cost analysis?
I believe so.
I don't know if that's a big number, or maybe these buses would be propane. I don't know.
Well, and the other part of it too is that if we do not have to hire a driver, and a lot of times our coaches drive, but not everybody in every program. So let's, for example, take a debate team that could fit in one of the people movers. They may not have their CDL. And so now we're not having to pay for the driver because our own sponsor is driving that bus. And of course, they'd have to have the training and things, but we're not talking about a vehicle so large that they couldn't manage that. So I think there's cost savings there too.
Wayne, if we had all our buses, if there's 25, isn't there times during the year though we need more than 25 buses?
There is, I mean, and really it's, the heaviest part of the year honestly is in the spring, whenever stuff starts happening with district events and competitions as they come to a close for the year. I believe the number that when I had asked Ms. Meads about that, the number that I was given was around 30 to 31 was probably the highest number that we needed for any one day, but that actually, like she said, that's more in the late spring time or whatever, so it's actually not right now, but yeah, there is times.
I've got, I guess, a question for Mr. Welch. Is our purchasing department helping the people find the buses? Because I know when back in the day, when I was actually still employed, you know, sometimes if you weren't on a particular vendor's list, then even though we found buses, we were told we couldn't use them. So are we able to use the resources and availability that we have to make sure, regardless if they're on a list or not, that they can get buses?
We have continued to approve the purchase of these transactions for the buses after exhausting all of the approved vendors that are available for, you know, that we actually work with a co-op with another district that really is the co-op to go to for all of these transportation, the charter buses, and vet them out. And so once they're not able to accommodate a need, then we then immediately start looking at other resources. And these have, once we're able to find something, we're able to move forward with them as we have on these.
Okay.
Sounds like you're going to be bringing this back in more detail. Could we include a sensitivity on the price of the vehicles? I know just the car market is really inflated right now. I'd like to understand how significantly this might be inflated right now as well.
Correct. That's a good point. And we're in the middle of a budget year, so we'd be looking to the future anyway, and probably definitely not now. So that's a good point.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next report is a construction update. Still in operations, Mr. Clete Welch.
A few things, we're going to go over a few construction pictures over our projects coming. Then kind of the last thing I want to talk about is kind of response to the demographic report that was presented earlier and what that means to us as far as the future and where I believe we need to go. With the admin, we have
just basically two pictures from the distance. It kind of gives the best overview. The top right one's basically, that's the finance area, business services, operations, communications, superintendent's area. And you can see that they have walls, there's some stone going up, you've got the interior, rough-in electrical, and some of the support dense glass walls also, you can see those. And then on the main part of the two-story building, if you look real close, you can see the stairwells. They're going in. Obviously, they're still putting in steel, framing it in. I believe Billy told me this morning that they poured the decking was last week, and they have now put the concrete from the second floor in place. So they're moving right along there, and they did a few things to help get us back on course on this project. So we feel good about the time on that when this was going to begin, and our move-in will begin end of June, first part of July. Boswell still continues. I'll talk about the picture on the right. So this is an illusion. If you see the Bos, the state of Texas, that looks like that is an exterior garage door. That's not. That is the far west wall. So we took the picture. It just happens to look like it's going to have a garage door there, which it will, but that's not the Bos that's going to go there. That's on the other side. So that's really what the interior, they got that side, that logo's on the other side, on the east side also. Hellas we'll put the remaining gravel, level that out, and they'll start on the turf fairly quickly around Thanksgiving. And then you can see some of the new construction work that they had to work on to repair the part of the north side of the building. You can see the drainage. They had to take down the exterior skin of that and make sure it was supported properly. So they've done that, and we're still looking for first part of the year into December finish on the turf ring. Left picture just shows more landscaping trees being planted as we move around to the back end of it for the project. Other things, Eagle Mountain Elementary, the cafeteria, if you really went in there, you really couldn't. The lighting was pretty poor, it didn't work, what I would say. But now they've got the new LED lighting in there, and it makes a large difference as far as how that looks. The last thing I have there is elementary 18. We've talked several different locations of we have one elementary left in our current bond program. So we've talked about numerous things, possibly up to 3 different locations. But the biggest thing I think we need to look at is what really Trent talked about is the growth over at Comanche Springs. And the amount of, when you look at the lots, what stage are those at? Because which ones can quickly turn over and produce students. And when you drive around there and you just look and you see with what's about to happen over there, we need to have the Krantz Farm location. Is my recommendation we move on that one. You can see you've got the Bar C, the Water's Bend South, the Todd Track, and then the Krantz Farm. All those are they're underway, and they've got some new roads. Some of them have concrete, and the one over in the Water's Bend South. Typically, you go down a road, there'd be maybe 20 homes that they would work on and just kind of continue. Now, there's over 100 of them in this one little area, so they're going to put those houses in fairly quickly. So they'll have students in there by the end of the year. And so I think that will continue, especially in the Bar C. That'll be the next phase. You can see how they're going to, it has the potential to produce a lot of students. So when they projected up to 140 new students there next year. So when you talk about how many classrooms, teaching spaces, that's anywhere from 9 to 10. So it doesn't take long to fill up that school. So we'll move as quickly as we can. The roads for that site will be finished this summer. It's their projection for the roads and utilities. So that'll be an easy transition to move in for us. The one up north, we were not really sure about the roads and infrastructure being there. It might have been, we had about a 2 to 3 week window for opening the school when we want to open it and when we have the roads to support it. So that's pretty tight in the things we've been dealing with. So I feel like this is the best choice for the district this time. So.
Because we had 2 other sites we're considering, I guess those would be considered in an upcoming bond election, or so that would be 19 and 20. Is that, looking at his projections tonight, does that take us out 5 years, 2, or does it seem like it would need Or are there more in the, I think we'll need more in the next bond? than
Yes,
two?
I believe we need about at least three, minimum of three elementary schools, just for growth. In fact, depending on when the bond, we go out with the bond, elementary 19 could just follow the following year, or 1920, the next year after this one opens up. Because just, again, there's tremendous growth in the North Point area, Chapel Hill. So we've got to keep that, and that's a balance between, and he mentioned it, Eagle Mountain. Eagle Mountain's low now, but it's not going to take long for it to get full. So we got to be ready for that next school to come in and help pull some of those kids off of it and keep that balance. Which is what we did in the southern part of the district the last 20 years.
Right.
That's going to happen up north. And then.
What about the middle schools? You know, we were doing 2 per high school. Now we're fixing to open our 4th high school and we have 6 middle schools. So the projection for 7 seemed to be far out. So I guess our attendance zones for middle school kids going to the 4th high school, we're going to be back to some configuration of
Yes.
splitting middle schools or.
First thing is we need to get the Wayside new prototype built so it can hold some more students. That was the original plan to get us to 2026, 2027, depending on the ability, to finance it. So when we draw the high school lines, I think we'll set that up, even though you have 6 of them now and they're balanced, they will not be for a while. Southern part have a great chance of being pure, but until we get 7 and 8, that'll be a little bit of crossover between Wayside and Prairie Vista.
And looking at those projections, that might be 10 years or so past the building of the 4th high school? Or is that?
Well, we need 7 pretty quick. I mean, it's within 2 years after that one opens up. So 26, 27, and the middle school 8. That'll be kind of tricky because when Prairie Vista, however that ends up being pulled off, you have Highland there now with 1 middle school for Saginaw High School. So I don't think that'll last long because some of those Prairie Vista students, some are going to go to the new high school, some are going to go to Saginaw. So that'll be a blend in.
I'm more, the question is more focused around, are we still going to be able to keep the true feeder pattern at the end of the day, whether it's 5 years or 10 years, we'll have 2 middle schools going to the high school if we can.
Yes.
Purely all going to that one high school. That's where we're headed to when they're all 8 built.
As we were trying very hard with the elementaries.
And the elementaries too, true.
Yes.
Okay.
Just unfortunately, they can't all happen at once.
Right, I understand that. It's going to be some imbalance as we move along, but at the end of the day, it'll still be elementary, middle, high school.
Yes.
In their own.
That is the number 1 goal, is try to keep those students together all the way
Great.
through.
Anything else all right, thanks. We do have one finance report tonight, and it has to do with the foreign trade zone or TTI Inc. Mr. Rob Welch.
Trustees, Dr. Chadwell, President Newcomb, trustees, we do have one item tonight. This is the foreign trade zone request for TTI Inc. Last October, the district was presented, or not even last month, in October, the district was presented a request to designate a property owned by TTI Inc. as a foreign trade zone. TTI is a Fort Worth-based international distributor of electronic components. With us tonight, in the event that we have any additional questions, is Mr. Jim Urban, manager for foreign trade zone and imports with TTI, as well as Josh Griffith, who works with Hillwood, who is the grantee or an agent of the grantee for the zone. So one of the things as we looked at this request is looked at history, and along with other businesses during the same time period, the district has supported foreign trade zone designations with TTI, both in 2012 and again in 2015. And since those designations, TTI has built a $39 million warehouse within the district. So as a reminder, the foreign trade zone designation is a federally awarded designation that will allow for ad valorem tax exemptions of imported property, personal property, not the buildings and everything else, but the personal property, the inventory, as well as property that is to be exported. And so, so we would continue to, as a district and as other taxing entities, we would continue to benefit from the investment from the real property that TTI provides in establishing their businesses here. So the property being requested to be designated is a property currently owned by TTI. It is 37,000 square feet and approximately 3 acres. Currently, it does not house any inventory, so there isn't any personal property being removed from our tax roll. And then the property will be part of a planned expansion into a new sector that will relocate the headquarters for that sector to the area and spur additional growth and investment in the property. So since House Bill 3 went into effect, it's been even more favorable as far as the designation, as far as how it impacts the district from a standpoint. It's actually becomes very neutral on the maintenance and operations side, because the funding formula for the state of Texas utilizes current values. So in the past, there was some value, and that would be lost during the lag effects of the funding formula. But now it's neutral, and so this adds a lot of potential future benefit as our companies look to invest more into the area. So tonight we have a action item for this particular item. It comes as the support from the district comes in the form of a letter of no objection, and we provide a copy of that in the board book tonight. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to.
Just one thing before the questions, we really feel like the previous FTZ agreements have helped to increase growth in that area in the Mercantile Center and encourage us to be a busy, business-friendly environment. So we feel like it's a part of that whole plan that we started working on when the board first extended the FTZs a few years ago. And so although it does have the personal property effect, also many of those items, my understanding, are moving through that area. They're not actually staying here. They're being transported to other places. And this is something very common. And that's one reason why the federal government does this allowance, is because that they're not getting taxed at every stop along the way before they get to their final destination. So we think it's a net positive to the district, because for every piece of vacant property there could be additional commercial or industrial or distribution. And we feel like that encourages that type of growth in our industrial core in the southeast part of the district.
Thank you.
Any questions on that on trade? Thank you, Rod.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We move now to some education services report. The first is the district and campus improvement plans update. Dr. Parker.
Good evening, board members. It's great. I thought you were going to let Chief Ramirez go ahead of me, and I brought this down to a science right now. So we've got time. First of all, let me tell you, it's time for our annual district improvement plan presentation. So we moved through the process of our district improvement plan. We aligned everything with Aspire 2025, our strategic plan. As you can see here, this slide shows the process for the yearly plan, which includes the data analysis, the comprehensive needs assessment, which you're going to see evidence of in my next report as well. And then we created goals with performance objectives and strategies to meet these goals, all aligned to Aspire 2025. We found through our needs assessment there are specific areas to target for growth and academic improvement. Reading and math at every level, our special ed, which is a growing population, We continue to focus on that in both the district improvement plan and the campus improvement plans, and our work to increase the academic performance of our advancing students. To meet these needs, we've created specific strategies and responses. This includes enlarging opportunities for advanced learning with our talent pool at the elementary. We also are addressing goal setting at every level to not only address the academic needs of our students, but the social and emotional needs as well. Each overall goal of our district improvement plan is correlated to one of the 3 pillars in Aspire 2025. Here you see excellence in academics, our first pillar, and the goal under it. We believe in providing quality tiered instruction and the systematic intervention to increase achievement for every student. With this, we have our performance objectives. The pillar and goal of academic excellence has the largest number of performing objectives. As you saw in your board packet, we have 2 pages of these because this is our core work. We have a total of 11 objectives that range from academics to fine arts to a focus on the mental and physical health of both staff and our students. As part of our plan, we continue to develop and support the use of best instructional practices at Tier 1 coming out of the pandemic. SNOVID, movement of campuses from one to another and then back, has had a major impact in our student achievement, and we are addressing this in Tier 1, 2, and 3 instruction. I wanted to point out we are focused here, you'll see mental and physical health of students. Goal 2, in this goal of our plan, we have only 3 performance objectives, but they are key in our work to increase personalized opportunities with increased student achievement. We do this, as the goal states, through collaborative experiences for students, staffs, and community members. The 3 objectives are focused on the learning environment created where students actively engage and create goals based on their needs, sharing these with teachers and parents. The technology supports the learning and the engagement to meet the goals. However, it is not the driving of learning, but it's part of the support of the learning that we have. I think that's critical. Any questions on any performance objectives so far? Okay. In Goal 3, we have Tier 3. Our final goal aligns to our work in continuous improvement in the organization. We have 6 performance objectives here that support this goal of providing a safe, structured environment for students, staff, and community, where processes and procedures are communicated, monitored, and evaluated. We're working collaboratively through departments to meet these objectives. We continue to train and utilize the PDSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act process to evaluate and modify our processes. Under this goal is also where we include requirements of social and mental health support, as well as our character ed programs and student behavior supports. I have also added in the district improvement plan our board goals, reading, math, and CCMR. As you are aware, we brought these to you last year, and these are required through TEA. And I wanted you to remember that this is part of our core work. And we continue to seek that with the hopes by June of 2024, we've met all 3 targeted areas. You have received a jump drive at your desk, or I believe you received it in your board packet information. These have all the campus improvement plans as well as the district improvement plan. If you have questions as you peruse through those in your leisure, you're welcome to reach out to me. I will tell you, I'm going to ask for those jump drives back in June, and we'll add the next district improvement plans. Any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
You have the next report also, the accountability ratings report.
This is a very nice short report for, as you see, in 2021. Due to the state's declaration of disaster for COVID-19, no accountability ratings were given in 2020-2021. it still is part of a requirement to give you an accountability report. So what I prepared here was what we did receive. As you see here, STAR and EOC tests, graduation rates, and CCMR information was used to give districts data. We did not receive a ranking, a grade ranking, but I will tell you we met standards. We are staying at the current B rating. When you look at this, and if you look at the numbers, we're looking at federal requirements here at the meets level, not approaches. The state of Texas takes the approaches level, and this particular report is at the meets level. So when you see that 43, that's at the meets level. Some areas to point out, when you're looking at 36% down in closing the gaps and number of indicators met, per federal requirements, there are multiple indicators based on subpopulations, ethnicities, and in that certain requirements in reading and math only are to be met. These, they have different levels of requirement depending on those subpopulations, and then our score is based on that. And I'm pleased with our school quality status, as well as our, I'm looking at my notes for just a minute, hang on. In the school quality status, we're above the state. We're above the state in several areas of these, but our graduation rate continues to be level of success and our participation. The 98% is due to, if you'll remember, our remote students had to come into the campus to take the test. So we saw a little drop there because not all came to the test. Any questions?
Those same numbers were communicated out statewide, so
Yes.
there were some, because I heard you say we were above state for several.
For several of the
Several of the
areas here.
different,
Yes. It's a very detailed data set. I'm more than willing to pass it on to you with some explanations if you like in that.
I'll get with you on that.
Okay. Our ranking is based on that and those three.
Those subgroups?
Yes, and those subpops. Yes. Because of the disaster declared, there are no distinction designations for 2021. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Park.
Short and to the point. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Sorry, Mr. Ramirez. No, I said sorry.
Oh, that's fine, yeah.
He thought, what? We're gonna. It is currently 5:56 p.m. on November 15th, 2022. This board will now recess for dinner and then reconvene in a closed meeting pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Section 551.071, consultation with board's attorney, 551.072, purpose of discussing the purchase or exchange, lease, or value of real property, 551.074, purpose of deliberating the appointment, employment, reassessment duties, or discipline of a public officer or employee, 551.075, for the purpose of deliberations regarding deployment or specific occasions for security, 551.082, considering the discipline of a public school child or complaint or charge against personnel, and 551.0821, to discuss specific personal identifying information about a student. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw Independent School District. The board is reconvening the public meeting on November 15th, 2021 at 7:06 p.m. and will now consider the subjects set forth in the posted agenda. Welcome everyone to our November meeting. We're glad you're all here. We do have opening ceremonies today by Lake Point Elementary School, and I'll call on Principal Ms. Vanessa Kaiser.
Good evening. Thank you for letting us participate in the pledges tonight. I have Lane Bros, who's a 4th grader, Gabriel Bros, who's a 3rd grader, Kaylee Rose, who is a second grader, and Madison Rose, who is a first grader at Lake Point. And they were selected because as they were planning their birthday celebration in early fall, they wanted to do something for others. And so they decided that they wanted to collect items for the Saginaw Animal Shelter. So with about the help of 80 friends and family, they donated over 750 pounds of cat food and dog food and kitty litter. So we're very proud of them.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
And a moment of silence. Thank you.
Great job. Great.
Thank you, Lake Point. Great job. Next, we have some special introductions. So from the Education Services Department. Dr. Arnold? Okay, that's okay. I saw you. Sorry, Melanie.
Dr. Chadwell, and members of the board, it is a true joy to make these introductions tonight. Vanessa Kaiser is well known in the district. She has 23 years of educational experience, having served the last 9 years in Eagle Mountain, Saginaw. She began her career teaching 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. She has also served students as a dyslexia teacher, an interventionist, and a campus instructional coach. Vanessa holds a bachelor's degree from the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota, a master's degree in educational administration from the University of North Texas, and an educational diagnostician certification from the University of North Texas. Ms. Kaiser has been married to her husband, John, for 20 years. She enjoys reading, playing with her dogs, Maggie and Molly, attending Aggie football games, and working in her flower gardens. Ms. Vanessa Kaiser. Next, a true joy to present to you Mr. Brent Caldwell. Brent has taught for 8 years, and 6 of those years have been at Lake Point. He has taught 4th and 5th grade, and most recently, he has been the Student Success Academy coach at Lake Point. Mr. Caldwell received his Bachelor of Interdisciplinary Studies from Tarleton State University and his Master's of Educational Leadership from the University of North Texas. He is overjoyed that he can continue his journey with the Owls and looks forward to assisting Ms. Kaiser in growing the students at Lake Point Elementary. He enjoys spending time with his family, friends, and his dog, Erwin. And Mr. Caldwell, I believe you have some family members here. So, y'all can stand up.
Dr. Arnold, his friend from Wisconsin, came all the way from Wisconsin out to congratulate you. Isn't that awesome? Hi, everybody.
And now our third introduction. Daniel was not able to be here, but I'm going to go ahead and read his introduction, and he'll be here at a later meeting. He has served in public education for 13 years. He began his career teaching middle school social studies and has experience as a reading interventionist. Mr. Dodson has assistant principal experience at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. He earned his bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary studies with a specialization in 4th to 8th grade reading and social studies from Texas A&M. So we have a theme happening here. And his master's degree in educational administration from the University of Houston. Mr. Dodson and his wife have 3 daughters, ages 6, 8, and 4. He enjoys staying busy, supporting his children in their extracurricular activities, and serving at his church. And he is the new assistant principal at Copper Creek. So a joy to welcome all of these administrators.
Thank you, Dr. Arnold. We do have a report to continue from our 5 o'clock session, and it is Report E, the EMS ISD Police Department Creation Update. Charles Ramirez, welcome, Charlie.
Thank you. President Newcomb, trustees, Dr. Chadwell, it's always a pleasure to get in front of you guys. So today we're looking at, again, continuing the process and looking at our own police department. So today we're just going to go over proposed budget. I think you already seen some of these. So we talked about initially the purpose of the police department and some of the advantages we'll have to help us improve the safety and security of all campuses. But more importantly, it allows us to really hold our officers, our SROs accountable. It really allows us to monitor and manage our resources a lot better and basically focus on the needs of each campus as we see them. So if you recall, back in July, you actually approved a resolution to start the creation of the board. Part of that creation is to develop and actually get a budget approved. So with the approval, it would initiate the process for designing the department structure, establishing partners, agreements, licensing, hiring personnel, and training. The goal would ultimately be to have the police department by 2022-2023 school year. So I think you've seen these before. We've adjusted dates just a little bit. Again, the 3 phases we look at once you guys look at the budget. We're talking about basically developing MOUs and interlocal agreements with these entities, including Fort Worth, Saginaw, Blue Mound, DPS, Tarrant County, and of course the constable's office as well. And basically what that entails is we hash out with those agencies what our jurisdiction will be, what our responsibility will be, and how we have the mutual aid agreements in place for anything that happens both ways. If they need our assistance as a law enforcement agency, we're able to help them and vice versa. So once that happens, we actually receive those MOUs, we send them down to the state, and they assign an agency number. At that point, that's when you would be considered a true police department agency once you issue a number. The next phase would include the posting, job descriptions, the hiring of licensed peace officers. Again, this is something that we would want to get more of the experienced officers on board. We would not be sending any individuals to any schools or academies. We'd actually have the tenured officers coming on board. And again, we're looking at hiring the officers, getting them trained, getting them in place, developing all the policies and procedure, make sure you guys are okay with that, and then move forward for the next school year. So we look at our current staffing now. We have 10 SROs between Fort Worth and Saginaw. With those, we actually have allocated sergeants for each department. They also encompass the crossing guards for Saginaw, in addition to our athletic events and traffic control. So we look at the contracts that we currently have. So again, you look here, the estimated cost for services for the 21-22 is a little over $1 million there. We did receive that CARE Act funding credit, so that did go down this year. But want to let you know, per the Fort Worth contract, they can get another 2.7% increase next year, and the following year after that, another 2.9% increase per the contract. So that would go up for Fort Worth, and usually Saginaw follows along as well. So that's kind of our current budget, what we have as far as contracted services. So what we're looking for the police department is a proposed staffing level. We would obviously cancel the contracts at Saginaw and Fort Worth. we'd still maintain that relationship. We'd still maintain that ability to call them if we need them and have that ongoing relationship that we would just continue to enjoy their help if we need it. The plan is, here we go, is the 14 SROs. That would give 2 officers for each high school. That would allow 1 at Watson and 1 officer at every middle school. We would have our own dispatch, basically our own dispatch call center. Working with Saginaw, it's one of those things that we can serve as a backup if they need it as well. And then we would have the 2 sergeants to oversee our 14 SROs. Now, the number right here is done for several reasons. The 2 officers in each high school, I think we're at a size for every high school that when police do respond, they usually respond in 2s or 3s. And so I think in order to provide that coverage and provide that better safety, to have the 2 officers already on campus when we need them. What it also does with 14 officers, 7 in each school, or 7 in each team, we would have 2 sergeants over each team, and they would come with 2 response teams. So they would have 1 response team and a 2nd response team backing them up if we need an incident that may occur at any school. This is a number that we like when we talk about a tactical response, as far as coverage, as far as entry, as far as being able to have enough staffing to actually go in and identify and eliminate a threat. And so 7 is usually our number that we would use on a lot of warrants. Of course, we wouldn't run the warrants here, but being over SWAT, it's one of those things that's your minimum that you wouldn't want handling the scene. But the way we're training now, first officer on the scene takes care of it. He's now waiting for 7, but the 7 ideally would go in and actually search if they have the opportunity. But we can talk about the training for that down the road. So the increased cost for services, you're looking at $287,600 is primarily due to the increased cost of the number of SROs. So we'll actually have 8 more SROs than we would. And again, that would allow for a better response. And of course, we talk about the traffic control and the athletic events. And if you looked on the last slide, we saw, we spent upwards of $110,000 just on off-duty work for police officers. The ideal is to leverage our resources and actually have them have the ability to flex their schedule, the ability to work into the evening hours. That's part of their schedule, so we're not paying overtime or we're not paying an additional officer to come on our campus. That would be part of their responsibilities during that day. We would still have to hire off-duty officers. There's so many things that happen, so we still maintain those partnerships with Saginaw and Fort Worth. But again, at a reduced cost as well.
What about the traffic, the crossing guards? Would this staff, the new staff, handle that?
So you know what, we got several ideas that we're looking at with the crossing guards. As you know, we have safety and security officers that are in the schools. Well, it's one of those things that we're going to train them to do traffic control and traffic crossing guard detail. We also, Rob and I had actually been talking about a vendor that would come in and maybe do that as well in some of these, but ideally we would have our safety and security officers trained in the ability to, and it's an 8-hour course that they should be required to learn the liabilities, learn how to actually, stop traffic safely and walk kids across. So it's one of those things. With Saginaw, of course, the contract that it's going to be on your action item today, that actually pays for it. It's $9,000 for Saginaw crossing guard. So again, it's one of those things that we can look at some of the resources that we have at the middle schools. For instance, we currently have our SROs helping cross guard Marine Creek. They would continue to do that as well. So it'd be one of those things that we would better utilize our folks, especially with the 2 high schools. We'd be able to work traffic really well, especially in the morning when they have those. So we would look at a vendor if we have to, but I think, we'd look internally first, see if we can train our guys and to take over that role as well. The only thing we have on contract are the 4 crossing guards for Saginaw is what we have right now. So
and I was just thinking, so this doesn't include our other schools crossing guards like the elementary, that's a separate entity?
Yes, and so especially with Saginaw, I'm not sure about the contract we have, our current vendor that we have. It's one of those things that we were looking at what we currently have, but it's, again, Saginaw is the only one that we have contracts for the crossing guards. Fort Worth doesn't give us any crossing guards, and the way Fort Worth does it, they won't do it at really a middle school or a high school. They would do it for the elementary school. Fort Worth does utilize a different contract. We have nothing to do with that, and they would continue to do that because that doesn't affect this contract right now. So again, it's a vendor that they utilize for all the schools that Fort Worth have SROs at. So it's Fort Worth and Eagle Mountain and Saginaw. So Fort Worth area. So we continue to use that.
Just to confirm, you're saying the Fort Worth crossing guards are covered through the city of Fort Worth?
Yes. It's separate. That's high vendor. We didn't have anything to do with those guys. They hire them to do that, and they pay them to do that. And they'll continue to do that. So we talked about roles and responsibilities. Again, I don't want to read through everything, but again, if you look at the org chart, we're looking at the chief of police and some of his major responsibilities, duty, mainly department management, daily operations, his law enforcement part, and the safety part on his roles and responsibilities. Again, some of the things that he'd be responsible for, again, are the training, the supervising, and the evaluating job performance. The administrative stuff, again, talking about getting the equipment for these individuals, maintaining all the records and maintaining all the documents required by the state. One of the things that we create too is in a chain of command would be the number 2 would be a captain. His role and responsibility again would be to oversee the day-to-day operations of the police department. We're going to utilize 2 sergeants. Sergeants will actually oversee the SROs. They'll be responsible for handling initial complaints of any officer, to investigate any offense that occurs. So that will be actually our sergeants, supervisors / detectives. So they'll be the ones responsible for actually filing cases that happen or occur at the school. They'll work directly with the JP in this instance, or directly with the Tarrant County DA or the Tarrant County Juvenile Social Services to file on juveniles. Again, that's something that we would take care of that. But again, if we have something that happens that of course is beyond ours, we'd still have that MOU in place where we could work a homicide that took place maybe in our jurisdiction, or a sexual assault that we could actually file and see that through and still be able to utilize those experts in those fields. Of course, we talk about school resources officers. They do so much, but these are the main things that we want them to do or have them doing. We talk about our police dispatcher. This dispatcher will be responsible basically to have eyes and ears on the officers all the time. They'll be able to see officers and take those calls that come in from the schools, take the calls that come in from anything that's anybody that's actually needing police on our property, either it's after hours or during a game or during a police event, a school event at any time. And of course, they're going to be the ones that when the officers call in and we can run driver's license, we'll run local checks on individuals that we run into. So here we're talking about the facilities, and so I think President Newcomb had an opportunity to go by the Hapley Center and kind of get a feel for what we're wanting to do. But some of the requirements for a facility, the state does require CJIS, the Criminal Justice Information Center, and basically all that is saying you have to have secured locations for the computers that are actually hooked up for our national database and our state database, so that way we have the ability to run those licenses, run names, run for warrants, check for runaways, check for all these things, and so that has to be secure. And so that's usually done, of course, by card access or keypad, along with camera system as well. And those people in that area have to be CJIS certified. So the folks working for us, if it's an admin assistant or if it's a IT personnel, they would have to have the CJIS class to make sure that they have the ability to have access to that area. Another thing that's required in a police department is the property evidence room, properly ventilated. We talk about, we take possession of some drugs, we take possession of some things, and so they need to make sure that it's properly ventilated, because we talk about cameras, we talk about limited access as well. We also, part of the facility is going to be a holding area. And this is something, if we have to take a kid in custody, it's not a jail, and it's not meant to be there for punishment, but basically a room that we can bring a kid to and bring his parents to come pick him up, or have the ability to interview the kid or young adult there in that facility. And it has to be secured, and it has to be properly videoed and unlocked. So again, that's one of the things that we would use sparingly. It's one of those things, if we take a kid that needs to be picked up by a parent and we allow the parents to come pick him up, either it's he was involved in a criminal offense, and we decide to file a case, but we're doing an out of custody case, not taking him to Kimbo or taking him to jail. We then take him to this facility and then get him released to a parent. So instead of maybe staying at the school and maybe causing a little disturbance there, we actually have a facility that they can actually go to. Some of the things we talk about that we do have current funding for, the Card X readers, some camera upgrades, and what we'd like to see is really it's a locker room and fitness area. I know Cleet has actually walked the facility with us. He's made his notes on his maps, and so we're looking at that. Not sure exactly a cost on that, but very minimal as far as what we want to do. Not really any new construction, and I think the facility we have now will work for startup really quickly. Other equipment supplies. We talk about vehicles and we talk about radios. I think Dr. Chadwell, last time we talked about our ability to partner with Fort Worth and get some of their decommissioned vehicles. And these are still frontline vehicles that have little miles on it, but for what we need them for, it's perfect, because we're not going to be pursuing people. We're not going to be running call to call. We're actually going to be sitting in those parking lots, helping out with traffic. And so more of a billboard, if you will, in front of that school to let them know that police officers are there. So again, it doesn't have to be one of these ones where we have to drive fast to go anywhere. Matter of fact, policy would prohibit officers from getting in pursuit unless it's something really bad. We have money there for supplies. We're asking for weapons, ammunition. Looking at other considerations, I would come back to the board and ask for your opinion on tasers and body cameras. I think it's important that we have those tools on our tool belt. But again, with that comes a lot of policies that we have to put in place to make sure that they're actually used the way they're supposed to, and that our officers are trained to use that equipment. And again, with the opportunity of getting a police department, we will be eligible for a lot of different grants that we normally would not be. And so COPS grants, WASI grants, which is a federal grant for equipment and supplies for police departments, we'd be eligible for that as well. And we definitely capitalize on that. So we're talking about the overall budgets, what we're looking at, and kind of that's why we're here. So we talked about a little bit our contract services portion of the safety and security budget. As the area had the biggest change, it's important to remember contract services is only a small portion of the overall safety and security budget. This slide represents a 5-year view of the funds spent, budgeted, or estimate in order to provide exceptional safety and security for the students and staff. As the district has grown, this budget has grown from 1.5 million in 2018-2019 to 2.3 in 2021-22. In order to be ready for our students and staff beginning in 22-23 school year, we would request the 2021-22 budget be amended of the amount of $251,640. These funds will be used to hire staff, train staff, to hire advanced supervisors to help with the documentation and the planning process. The CARES Act that we had received will be actually used for training and equipment and supplies. If we look into the estimated budget for 2022-23, we estimate to spend $2,736,697, which is an increase of $371,874 over the 21-22 original budget. This increase is primarily due to the number of SROs, and it does includes an increase for fuel costs and some supplies. There's also a risk management assessment that we have to go through every 3 years, and that's due at the end of this year, and that's in the budget as well. Again, once the police department is funding, we would take advantage of all grant opportunities that come our way, and any rebates that we could have on some of the equipment that we buy. Again, here we look at the overall organizational chart. What would it look like? Of course, the superintendent would actually be over the chief of police. We have, you guys actually approved the technology coordinator who's over our IT department, who's handling our cameras, doors, and the PA systems in the schools right now. The captain would actually oversee the dispatchers, the sergeant, and of course, you see the coordinator over here. We're not asking for any more money. We're just going to realign some of our resources to actually make it flow a little better. And we'll talk about span of control here. And so that's why this chart is just an overview of what it would look like. So the approval of the budget would allow the district to continue the application process for certification to the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, TCO. The goal would be to have the police department in place by the 22-23 school year. And again, the creation of the EMS ISD Police Department would allow for managing our SROs more efficiently, a faster police response, a presence at all campuses, a police presence at all campuses, and consistency on how we enforce laws across the campus as well, because we're not doing them to three different jurisdictions. We would have one jurisdiction, and that would be an ISD jurisdiction. This time, if there's any questions, I'm here. And I really want to thank Teresa for getting the numbers and getting me squared away. She did really big help for me. So,
William?
Said police presence at all campuses. How is that? I'm just seeing SROs for high schools and middle schools here. How do we have a presence at elementary?
So what we got is we got a built-in relief officer. We do have 2 officers at every high school. So there are times when those schools need somebody, or that somebody calls, I have to turn around for the principal, for an officer, we'd be able to send somebody there immediately. Right now, because of the contracts with SROs, we cannot move them from those campuses unless we get permission from a deputy chief. And they're usually, at that school until we get that permission. And so with us, we'd have the ability, if someone's, suspecting an angry parent coming up, we could just immediately send an SRO down there and be there for the week if they have to. And so the flexibility to have two officers at high school, the idea was that they could pull off and stay at elementary school if they needed to go. And then we'd have the one relief built in. So that would be the one that would be checking in with almost every elementary school every day. And so to have that presence just driving through, coming through the schools there. And so we would really manage those resources really well.
So will we follow the feeder pattern? Okay.
That's correct. So the 2 teams would actually follow the feeder pattern up to the schools. And of course, one sergeant would be responsible for 2 high schools, and the other sergeant would be Watson and the other high school.
And then one more question. Where in the budget, where are we going to put the vehicles?
Well, we're looking at grants, and we wanted to make sure that, we, again, Dr. Chadwell and I have talked about this at great lengths as far as our ability to really tap into a great savings for us for the cars. And I'm pretty sure that we can actually create an MOU so they would allow us, instead of auction off cars, give us the ability to buy them at a really, really, really reduced rate. And that'd be fully equipped as well. So we wouldn't have that extra expense on that. Of course, we would take out cages or anything like that we don't need. But that we would have to come back to you and let you know, the exact price again.
You mean where? Where would they be, or where would you get?
Well, just where the finance. To support that. And then will they be at will we put them over in operations?
Most likely they'll be take home, right?
Yeah, so most likely they'll be able to take them home unless we get a secure lot at the Halfley facility, but I don't think we need that. But that way these officers can go directly to their school instead of having to come and check in unless we're doing some training or something like that, hold roll call and get them going. But ordinarily they go directly to where they're assigned, straight from their house. So,
Tim, where do you fall in the organizational chart?
Wherever you want me to fall, Mr. Daughtry.
I mean, are you in your position you are now? Is the chief going to be a different person than you are?
Well, you know what? Dr. Chadwell and I have talked about that, and I love my role as the director. And I know with getting the right number two in place to see the everyday, I would be able to fill both those roles as a chief of police and our director. I think being able to oversee from a district-wide standpoint, I think I can keep that right where I'm at right now. And again, allow that captain and the sergeants to actually do the day-to-day. And I, of course, ultimately oversee everything and making sure. So I don't see, a lot of districts do have two different, but they're so close in what they do. To me, it doesn't make sense that we split that up and just have two different people doing basically the same thing. So
I think that would be, you know, with your experience, I mean, that, you know, and everything that you know, and I mean, you've been at the highest levels. I mean, I think that gives me a comfort, you know, knowing that you're not just going to continue doing your job and then slash you're through with this. I think you being actively involved in this, in my opinion, would be a good thing.
No, I'm ready to see this through. We started this, and like I said, I love what I'm doing now, and being able to add to it, just make this ISD the safest one in Texas. I mean, that's my goal.
I do want to say that Mr. Ramirez has continued to get his training. He is currently a peace officer, licensed peace officer. He's maintained all of his training and licensure, so he's stayed up with all of that.
Yeah.
Paige?
What happens in the summer?
Okay, so summer, we'll have a reduced staff. It'd be a 207 calendar for the officers. We'll still have 3 or 4 officers that maintain for summer school, and we'd still have the ability to answer calls for service. I'll be here over the summer, kind of like Dr. Chadwell, we have that longer schedule, but the majority of the officers would be off because, you know, we want them here when our kids are here. So, you know, this year we had 3 officers, SROs, work over the summer for the schools. We'll actually have 4 working over for the summer schools. And again, all we would do is just schedule them a few more days than the other folks. Oh no, I think what we're doing is subsidizing that. It'd be like it'd be like an extra job. So I think we had a little bit more in that just for that.
Yeah, I saw the summer school.
Yes, that's
exactly. As far as hiring, is there concerns about that summer for those that won't be retained?
No, I think, you know, and I think that's
attraction. Yeah, okay.
It's a big selling point for officers who are just, you know, finished 25 years. They get that whole summer off, and then they get the holidays, and so I'm really able to sell it pretty good. And so some of these guys that like I explained, Dr. Chadwell, I'm getting officers who are calling now, and they're excited about the fact that they would have the ability to still have summers off and have holidays off. And normally we never would. This is going to be the first Thanksgiving I've had off in forever because we usually come in and work the holidays. And so I don't know what I'm going to do for a week off because I never that. And so that's going to be a big selling point over the summer that they're going to be off. But again, make sure we have enough to cover. And as far as night shifts, we will have officers rotate on night shifts, so they can answer any call if anything happens on our property or our jurisdiction. And so they're going to be available for that. And again, still working with Fort Worth, still working with Saginaw. Yeah, I've been, of course, in contact with Fort Worth chief and then the Saginaw chief, and they're pretty excited about the opportunity of doing a lot of things with this.
Do y'all have mandatory retirement in police forces?
No, ma'am, we don't.
Okay.
We got, I think the oldest guy in Fort Worth is 67.
Okay.
And he's still going. But we do have a 25 and out retirement. So you have the officers who are extremely young who are just retiring 25, maybe want to not slow down all the way, but want to do it a little bit.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, yes. I was thinking we could attract some of the more experienced officers that are
and so that
55 years old, not ready to retire.
Exactly. And so we would have some physical standards that we would require as a police officer. We just don't want them to go, you know, and just play around. We would make sure that they're qualified to do the job before we even offer it. But again, you see, you know, the officers that are interested are, you know, my target is going to be those retirees, and we'd be able to get the cream of the crop. We're looking at folks who do have SRO experience as well. But yeah, there's no mandatory, and you know, it's one of those things that some officers just love doing it and they do it for a long time. So again, it's hard to say how long you'd actually get them for. But.
And just let y'all know, in the feds, it's 55, it's mandatory retirement. So you're going to be attracting them too.
As a matter of fact, I did have an air marshal who wanted to come on board as long as he's a T-GOL. He has son at Boswell. He's real big in the campus there. So he's retiring this year and he asked about it, so.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you guys.
That concludes the report items. We now move to action item. The first action item is to consider a teacher's abandonment of her position without good cause and propose complaint to the Standard Board of Education certification for abandonment of contract.
I move the board find good cause not to exist under section 21.105 parentheses C, close parentheses, parentheses 2, close parentheses of the Texas Education Code for Marla Williams to abandon her contract for the 2021-2022 school year, that the board did not consent to her resignation, and that the board authorizes the superintendent to file a complaint with the State Board of Educator certification to seek sanctions for her abandonment of contract.
Second.
Motion by Donna, second by Paige. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Next is to consider the approval of the letter of no objection for foreign trade zone for TTI Inc. We heard that presentation earlier. Mr. Rodwell.
I make a motion to approve the letter of no objection in expanding the foreign trade zone to TTI Inc. at its 5050 Mark IV Parkway location.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Liz. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. That concludes that portion of our action item agenda. Any questions on the routine monthly reports? Hearing none. Dr. Chapel, the board planning council.
Yes, on page 172 of your packet, you'll see under operations, we'll continue with construction update, maintenance update, and bond projects. Also, finance report will be a history of the relationship of property tax values to outstanding bonds, just so for you to see that connection. Also, under educational services, we'll have a school calendar proposal. Dr. Barnes has been working with the committees on that, and we're ready to bring a proposal forward for that. We also have under action items, special recognition to proclaim January 2022 as School Board Recognition Month. And also, as was mentioned earlier from a speaker, the opportunity to vote for TAD Board of Directors in your action items there. We'll have a number of routine reports, and you'll see that the district and campus improvement plans, superintendent's contract and wellness policy will be in the consent items, and also the submission of the class size waiver if needed.
All right, again, if there's a item you'd like to see considered for the agenda, please let us know, board members. Next is the consent agenda for approval.
Move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Paige and second by Liz to approve the consent agenda. Seeing no questions, all those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. As far as board president's announcements, since we're in November, hope everyone has a nice Thanksgiving and week off. We're looking forward to that. In our board packet, there was a question about a tour of a new central administration building request. And also, Dr. Chapel may have been fixing to mention this, but an HCTC open house invitation also included there. Dr. Chapel?
Yes, and just like Mr. Newcomb, we hope everybody has a wonderful holiday coming up. We know we've been looking forward to it. Probably all have a lot of special plans for this next week. Also want to mention that we have our holiday open house on December the 8th. That'll be in the HCTC, so we can have more elbow room, and it'll be from 10 to 2. And we also, I remember we're ending the semester actually in 2021. So this is maybe the first time, I'm not sure since when, but that's, I know people are kind of excited about that change as well. So if you have any questions on any upcoming events, we'll let you know. We know we're going to have a number of just various events coming up. We have football playoff game this Friday for Boswell High School and a nearby town, Lubbock Cooper. So that'll be exciting. I hear there's charter buses available. Just heard that. No, it's going to be exciting. And then also just all of our musicals coming up. We have 3 sets of musicals, 2 that'll be before the Christmas break, and 1 that'll be in January. So we'll make sure we provide you all that information. So a lot of great things happening.
I think Matilda is the same.
This weekend.
The same weekend as the football
Yes.
deal, right? Okay.
Yes. So I think it starts on Thursday. Then it goes Friday, Saturday.
Sunday.
I'll be at Sunday. I'm going to
Sunday
watch the
matinee.
best one on Sunday. I'll be there at 2 o'clock.
The matinees.
Yeah.
Always exciting. Seeing there's no further business to come before this board, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Donna, second by everybody else. We're good. Marilyn.